Our top focus on fine print tonight. Russia. It's unleashing waves of drones, bombs and missiles across Ukraine. But Ukraine is exploiting critical gaps in Russia's air defenses. And this is what reports are now suggesting. It is hitting back harder than ever by striking deep into Russian territory in a dramatic escalation that could reshape the battlefield altogether. Here's our report.
Flames tear through Ukrainian skies. Explosions rip through homes. Buildings reduced to dust. As Russia unleashes a massive swarm of drones on Odessa. This comes a day after Moscow carried out the largest coordinated air assault in recent times. Russia struck Dnipro 20 hours straight, killing at least 10 people and injuring several others. Another grim reminder of the war's expanding toll. Zelensky reveals the scale of Russia's strikes. He claims Moscow has launched around 1,900 attack drones, nearly 1,400 guided aerial bombs, and about 60 missiles of various types towards Ukraine over the past week. The Ukrainian president admits Russia's large-scale aerial assault has left Kiev scrambling for air defenses. Ukraine faces a critical shortage of Patriot air defense systems, and stockpiles could shrink further if Russia's relentless strikes continue. But Kiev is no longer just striking back. It is also striking far. Ukrainian drones are now penetrating deep into Russian territory, targeting energy hubs and military installations. Experts say overstretched Russian air defenses are cracking under pressure. Over the weekend, Ukrainian drones traveled nearly 1,800 kilometers deep into Russia's industrial heartland, reaching the Ural region for the first time. The record-breaking mission bypassed Russian air defenses for over 10 hours. Russian authorities claim a Ukrainian drone hit a multi-story apartment building in Russia's fourth largest city, Yekaterinburg, home to many defense sector factories. A chilling sign that the war is no longer confined to the front lines. As the Russia-Ukraine war rages on, Finnish President Alexander Stubb has flagged staggering numbers of the battlefield. He claims Ukraine has killed or wounded between 30 to 35,000 soldiers of Russia every month. This means that Russia has suffered 4:1 personnel loss ratio against Ukraine. As tensions escalate on both sides, Russian troops continue to seize more land in eastern Ukraine, and peace talks remained in cold storage. Questions now arise on how far this war will go on and who will blink first. Bureau Report, WION The World.
All right, to discuss this further with me, I'm now being joined live on the broadcast by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, military expert and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Lieutenant Colonel, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for joining us. Allow me a moment just to make a few more facts clear to our audience, and I'll come to you with the question thereafter. Let me start with the data that's suggesting that Ukraine has in fact carried out over 1,530 verified attacks across Russia and the eastern Ukrainian territories that have been taken over by Russia. And that includes, these are attacks on Sevastopol, largest strike, at least 71 drones which were targeting Russian assets overnight. Several Russian naval vessels targeted, a reconnaissance ship targeted, radar systems, infrastructure, at least 10 attacks on Russian oil and gas infrastructure, and an attack as far in as Chelyabinsk, that's nearly 1,800 kilometers from the Ukrainian-Russian border. That has something that has never happened in the past, at least not in these last 4+ years. Russia, on the other hand, is suggesting they've killed 1,145 Ukrainian troops just in the past one day. This is Russian state media. I want to come to you and understand, Lieutenant Colonel, as far as Ukraine finding openings in Russia's famed air defenses, how do you feel Ukraine is suddenly able to do this after all these years of war? We're in the 5th year of the war. What have they suddenly developed in their arsenal? Over to you.
Well, I think, first of all, in these casualty figures, I think you have to take with a big grain of salt both sides' claims against the other side, because there's no independent verification, and both sides have an benefit for their side, especially to claim that there's huge casualties on the other side. There's a lot of casualties, but we don't know the actual number. So we shouldn't get any comfort that, oh, well, 35,000 Russians are getting killed or 35,000 Ukrainians are getting killed, because we just know that the war has continued to slog on like this for a long time. Specifically, in terms of your question there, what it appears that the Ukraine side has expanded its capacity. That's really what's different now. As you pointed out on that graphic, they're firing into Ekaterinburg, further down south again into Sevastopol, because they have more assets that can fly longer range. And as you go through the war, you learn how to do things better than you did before. Your technology and the drones themselves are getting more sophisticated. They're figuring out ways to get through air defenses, and then there's just more of them. So it's not. I don't think I agree that the Russian defenses are cracking and breaking as much as they're just being expanded, the target list. So more places are having to be protected, and they just didn't have as many because Ukraine didn't have as much capacity. Now they do, and we'll see what the Russian reaction to that is going to be.
Lieutenant Colonel, that increase in capacity, and let me also highlight for our viewers that it was just weeks earlier that the Ukrainian president was on a tour of the Gulf, and he was there to sell Ukrainian air defenses, and Saudi and UAE and Qatar, they're all interested in Ukrainian air defenses, while their own stockpiles also seem to be suggesting that there is an increase because of the change and intensifying of their attacks on Russia. How is Ukraine able to do this when we understand that the US is largely occupied in West Asia at this point?
Yeah, because the Ukraine, there's two things simultaneously work here. One pro, one con for the Ukraine side is that they are in desperate need of air defense for Patriot interceptor missiles to take down Russian missiles. That's where they're still really struggling for obvious reasons, because there just aren't that many interceptors coming into Ukraine anymore, because they're all going to the Middle East. But at the same time, as you're pointing out here, their capacity for drones, domestically produced drones, is accelerating because they've had 4+ years of experience to try to do pros and cons and figure things out and come up with great processes. Well, the Middle East, they've got more air defense missiles for anti-ballistic missile defense, but they have very few for anti-drone capabilities, and especially at the Shahed 136 type from Iran into the Middle East part. Of course, that's what the Russians use. So they would definitely go to the people who have the most experience in taking down those kinds of drones. So it really makes sense that both sides would be interested in that.
Understood. And Lieutenant Colonel, also this is something that I would definitely like to bring to your attention, and I'll have a graphic map in front as well. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, he says that Putin receives briefings several times a day and on need basis on Ukrainian attacks. So clearly there is a regular briefing going out. The Kremlin did not deny or accept reports of the attack on the Urals, that's Chelyabinsk, 1,800 kilometers into Russia, and as the map shows, it actually borders Kazakhstan. And they've not denied any report that that attack, perhaps instead of coming from Ukraine, could have come from Kazakhstan. And this is what the spokesperson for the Kremlin said, that they referred the media to the military. They did not specify whether the situation is being discussed with the Kazakh side or not. And Kazakhstan is largely considered Putin's backyard and among Russia's closest allies. Is this opening a completely new domain in this war if Kazakhstan's role is getting established?
It certainly could if the conflict gets expanded into there. But I would caution about the fact of it hitting that far is one thing, but what is being hit and how does that affect the war is a separate issue. For example, in the video you showed there a minute ago in Ekaterinburg, you saw an apartment building hit, and while that's certainly bad for the people who live there, that has literally no impact at all on the conflict itself. Only if you're going to hit something military that has to do with support for the front or support for the war industries, etc., then you have a bigger issue. But then it's scale, because Russia is such a massive country. Even Ukraine is a really, really big place, and they have been pummeled by the Russian side. And you see that has not brought them to their knees. So we shouldn't get too excited that it's going to cause Russia to come to their knees when they're far, far bigger and their stuff is more spread out. Bottom line is this is just continuing on this war of attrition, and it doesn't look like either side is ready to collapse anytime soon. So I don't think that we're going to see an end to this war no matter who's striking.
Lieutenant Colonel, always a pleasure speaking with you. Your perspectives always enlighten our viewers as well, and I appreciate your content that I follow on social media. That was Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis joining us on the broadcast.